Shall we begin the meeting? Call the meeting to order. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So this is the school committee meeting for October 12th, 2017. And just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded, and did want to acknowledge that over the past month, pretty much since the start of the school year, we've heard from various people that the audio has been challenging for people at home watching the meeting. So if we can each make sure to speak into the microphone, hopefully that will help. Right? Okay. So start with public comment. None? Thank you. Our public is not commenting. Chair's report. Anything I'll need to report will come up in discussion later. I don't have anything new, so I'm set.
Yeah, the only thing I have is an agenda item for the future. I just wanted your folks' reaction to it. Today I went over to Wakefield that has done a digital learning platform that they are using for snow days, where it's going to be a blended learning environment. It was really fascinating, the work that they've done, which basically means that when there is a snow day, the kids will be doing work at home and they will not have to make up any of the days, and it's been approved by the Department of Education. So didn't know if that's something you guys would like me to bring forward for a future agenda item. I mean, obviously that would be something that we would have to work collaboratively on to change, but I don't want to go down that path if it's not something you guys would be interested in.
Happy to share anything about it, sure. I would love to, but I'd also like to make sure we have our student representatives here for that.
Yeah, okay,
piece.
yeah. It would take me a bit to get going on it. I just wanted to, I wanted your thoughts on it before I started doing some of the work on it.
I'm familiar with that in other districts where it's been really successful, and people really feel good about that, and I feel like you sort of plowed the ground a little bit by giving the blizzard bags, so I feel like people might be open for the conversation.
Yeah, and different school districts, I can tell you what different school districts are doing, but I just wanted to make sure you guys were on board for that conversation. I mean, not that we would do anything, obviously, especially for this year, but just something to discuss. It's not a bad way to introduce a more blended learning environment into our district.
Yeah, it's
a real positive impact right out of the gate, so.
Right.
It's
Okay, so I will. We'll put that on the agenda. We'll figure out when. Not anytime soon, but sometime.
Okay.
It's definitely been brought up by people before. The blizzard bag in particular is the kind of
Yeah.
context I've heard.
Oh.
And they've done an amazing job. It's really quite impressive what they've done in Wakefield. So, and she gave us complete permission to take it, to borrow whatever we wanted to.
Very good. Anything else?
That's it.
School building committee, do we have any updates since I know we just talked last week?
Yeah, not a huge update, but yesterday actually, we had our bi-weekly coordination meeting. That's just with the architect and the OPM and the senior staff and myself. I'm not senior staff, I'm just volunteer. And the bid documents are coming along fine. The architect feels he's going to make that deadline of next Wednesday. We spent most of the time talking about the site itself, traffic and parking, permanent and temporary, both. I know the superintendent had a meeting with principals as well yesterday, but I mean, most of the feedback we're getting is, people are, concerned, legitimately so, about the parking and what's the traffic going to look like out there. So we have the site engineer and the traffic engineer working diligently with the town. The cooperation level is still very outstanding. They're calling the town engineer and the DPW director on a regular basis. So that's going well. Our next meeting is next Wednesday. The full school building committee is on 10/25. Again, we hope to approve the bid docs at that point. Those bid docs will post on November 1st, and we will open the bids on November 17th at 10 a.m. at Town Hall. So wake or wedding, we will be there.
You mean open the bids, read them is what you mean?
Read the bids and see how they come in. And then we'll vote.
November 17th.
That's November 17th. And then if
that's big.
Things go well, we will vote to award the contract on November 29th. So that's the timeline. So we're still on our timeline, but obviously everything depends on what transpires on the 17th.
That was actually my question. When do we actually? How does that process work? So if, let's say 3 bids come in, like you guys then vote, or how does a selection then occur on the 25th? Well, let's say they're all at budget.
That
Well,
would be a
that-
good problem to have.
That'd be a great problem to have. But like,
We would lean obviously heavily on the architect and the OPM to give us some guidance as far as
Okay.
that goes. They both feel very strongly that as far as modular projects go, this is a very attractive project. It's a larger modular project,
Right.
so they think we will get some competitive bids, and
Okay.
hopefully they'll be within our budget.
okay, I just didn't know like how the vote actually occurs on that.
We'll vote on the 29th. This would be my first time doing it as well, so we'll lean
Okay.
heavily on that. There are a couple people on the SBC who have been through this process before on both sides of the table. So we have a very, very good school building committee that has great experience with this. Do you want to touch on your
Yeah, I
meeting
just
with the
think it's really
principals?
important for anyone out there watching. We are spending a lot of time on traffic flow and signage and parking, and of course, nothing's going to be perfect, but we have TEC is an impressive group that's really thinking critically. And if you really think about this, there are 3 phases of it. The first is starting in March or April, construction. How are we going to get in and out of the ECC? And there's a lot of conversation about that. The second phase is the first year or so in the new space with the kindergarten before the middle school fields project is done. So you don't want to do anything that's going to impact that long term. And then the third phase is once the middle school fields project is done, what it's going to look like more permanently. Understanding with the caveat that we've been quite explicit is if we get invited into the MSBA for the middle school, we've also got to think about what a middle school expansion would do. So, there's a lot of moving parts, but we've really broken it down into 3 phases. This spring, next year, and then beyond next year. And you don't want to do something this spring and invest a lot of money if it doesn't fit into the beyond next year. So it's a pretty complicated conversation, and one that we feel like, all the principals today, we're talking about how many buses are going to be in and out, how many cars are going to be in and out, what's the relationship between Atkinson and the ECC, what's the relationship between ECC and the middle school. So Greg Landry was there, middle school was there, Mary Lou was there. So there's a lot of conversation going on, and a lot of creative thinking about it. And I know this is a huge concern for the town, legitimately so, and I can promise you it's not like we are thinking critically about this. I feel like we've spent more time on traffic in the last week or two than we have on actually the building, because the building is now ready to go to bid.
Yeah, we definitely did our due diligence on the building to start with, and we had to, obviously. But the traffic is, I don't know what feedback you folks are getting from constituents, but, everyone's concerned about the traffic and
Yes.
everything going on up there. It's, ground zero for our school department and our schools, period. Another good thing about TEC is they have fantastic relationships with Mass DOT, because obviously we're building next to a state highway, so they're going to have a say in this. So they have that, we're not just going to wait till the last minute and then contact Mass Highway. Mass Highway's already been in this room once already, so we're anticipating their concerns and them weighing in on this too. So we're on schedule right now.
No, I think it's really important addressing the traffic, because I went to most of the meetings that Dr. Price held for talking about the kindergarten building, and the number one issue was traffic concerns for all parties. So, good.
So we're working on it.
Great.
A backup on Chickering Road is not what we need.
No, no,
So we're committing to do our best to make sure that doesn't happen.
that's right. Okay. Any other questions about the school building? Okay, now we can move on to the crux of our time here. More discussion about the search process for our next superintendent. One thing I just wanted to confirm, I don't think we ever voted on this before. I've tried researching and reading. It sounds like it's not required but not bad to vote in that myself being the chair, and I appointed Holly Vitsky Lynch as being the other school committee member on this search committee. We've put together, this is mostly what you've seen before last time, but we never finished the discussion on who would be on the committee, what the makeup is. We did add one more parent for 2 reasons. One, having 15 people is good because it's not an even number, but also we had, and I'm grateful to say, we had about 50 applicants to be on this committee, and the incredibly impressive candidates. So I thank the community for their interest, and so we are looking to have 5 parents so we can make sure that we somehow touch all the schools, either historically or currently, across the district. Some people have had kids through the entire system, some are just the beginning, et cetera. We're working with the Teachers Association to select the teachers. We just heard back from them this afternoon. And then the selectmen are going to, on Monday, make their selection and let us know who's going to be on it from that. Ms. Fitzke-Lynch and I will be meeting after this meeting to finalize the candidates and be contacting them tomorrow and confirm that they can participate, and then contact the people who, to thank them who are not going to be on the committee, but to thank them for their interest.
Great.
Would you want to vote on this?
One question.
Yes.
The community one.
Yes.
Can you define that a little more about what that type of person?
Yeah.
Because that could be a parent, or that could be
Right, it could be, exactly. So the way we can look at it is anybody who's in the community who maybe doesn't have children in the school right now, or used to have children in the school, or someone who's heavily involved in various levels of the community, anywhere from, sports programs, youth center, library, civic organizations, what have you, some member of the community that, at large, that can look at.
And leadership team?
Leadership team is someone on Dr. Price's leadership, on the superintendent's leadership team.
And that's different from central office administration?
Yeah, so central office would just be assistant superintendents, director of human resources. Leadership team includes principals, assistant principals.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
Elementary directors of special education.
Right.
Middle school directors of special ed.
Does that help?
All right. I'll make a motion to accept these categories for the
Can I-
superintendent.
sorry.
We can put a motion
Go
on the
ahead,
floor.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we accept these categories for the superintendent search committee as they're presented on this piece of paper here.
I'll second that.
So motion by, Mr. Teresi, and second by Mr. McDevitt. Any comment?
Yeah, so you have 5 parents covering all schools at least once.
Right.
So that means, unless I'm mistaken, that both your middle school and your high school parent would have to have children at a different level, or
have had children at one of the schools.
Or have had, right?
okay, all right. So you don't mean current?
No,
parents
not
of-
necessarily.
So I was,
Not
I was
necessarily.
thinking we'd have to have
No.
specific parents with specific age ranges, and I didn't think that information was necessarily
Right.
available on the.
No, well, actually, people were pretty thorough about what their background was and what their involvement has been in the town and their volunteer and where their kids have been or where their kids do go or will go, actually, as well.
Okay.
So, but yes, so in some cases, people had kids at a certain elementary school. Maybe they don't anymore, but they have spent time there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments?
So I would just add one more thing,
Mm-hmm.
to change teacher number 4 to student services / ECC.
Very good. Good point. I forgot to do that last time.
It just allows you to expand to
Right.
counselors, nurses.
Yep. No, and I changed that actually before, and I forgot to change it here. Thank you. Anything else? All right, so can we take a vote? Do I have to do a roll call vote in this?
I made a motion, yes.
Yes. All right,
You
Mr.
say-
Teresi?
Not do a roll call. You can just
I
say-
guess-
all those
that's
favors,
fine.
aye. Opposed, those-
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. Yes. Opposed? Thank you. I just think that helps to make things kind of official. So the next document to look at would be the scenarios and timelines. Ms. Lynch and I got together and looked over or discussed some scenarios because we do need to put together timelines, and especially in talking to the committee members to make sure that they can work within these timelines and these commitments. We did our best to preview scenarios and questions, and so what you have here, I'd like to go over it quickly. So the first would be just a reminder that the internal application has been open since the day after the last meeting, so I think the 6th, and is open until the 19th. And so the scenarios go as follows. The first is if we get 2 or more internal applicants, the review committee would meet during the week of 10/23, and that week was already posted during the search when we asked for people to apply, that we needed a meeting that first week. And this reviews what they would be doing, suggesting changes to the superintendent qualifications document, which is also attached here. This document, as we said last week, was extensively developed during the last search with community input, et cetera. It's incredibly thorough and still quite relevant in most cases. There are some things we need to add, and the committee will review that as one of their first actions when they get together on the 23rd. We get together on the 23rd. We'll review the internal candidate applications, draft interview questions for those candidates, and then we would schedule the evenings that we would be able to review these, invite the people for interviews, and then also discuss possible tasks for any finalists to complete for us, the school committee, for consideration. So that's if there are 2 or more applicants internally. The next part here is if we receive 1 or fewer applicants, and we propose that we immediately post to an open search on 10/20 if we don't get more than 1 application on 10/19. And let me just say the reasoning, at least my point of view here. Having only 1 candidate would require that we would have to evaluate that candidate strictly against the criteria written here. And while some people may feel very comfortable being able to evaluate somebody strictly against criteria, I don't believe, or I don't believe that every member of this committee feels comfortable evaluating and making a selection based strictly on these criteria. Would rather have someone to compare with. And since selecting the superintendent is one of the top 3 jobs that we are elected to do, to cover, having it so that all members are not comfortable with that process and able to make their best evaluation doesn't make sense, and therefore that's why I was in favor of opening it up if there's only 1 applicant. We can stop here and see if there's any questions or comments about that.
I think that makes sense.
Well, obviously, we've talked about this. This is not how I anticipated last week when we voted to have an internal search. I understand you and Ms. Lynch, who obviously was on the other end of the vote last week, talked about this further. And I just want to say that I think you've given this a lot of thought, and I think you are trying to build consensus amongst the 5 of us, which is always a very important aspect of being the chairman. So I feel very comfortable going down this path because you are leading it, even though it's not my first choice. So I would, I'd say, you put a lot of time and effort into it, so we deserve to try this out.
Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Yeah, let me just takes me a minute to gather myself.
Sorry.
Just a little bit, sorry.
No, that's fine.
I would wonder, I would agree with David on all those things. Clearly this is thoughtful, and clearly us being able to move forward together is an important aspect of this. It makes me wonder if it's the greatest desire of the majority of people on this committee to have multiple candidates, if there's any advantage, and I don't know the answer to this. I'd like to hear what other people think, but I wonder, is there any advantage to waiting till the 20th to have a public posting, or if that's something we could do sooner than the 20th so that we're not losing time if in the event next week we have, you know what I mean?
Right.
It shortens the time period by a week, so I'd ask other people's thoughts on that.
I would just think that, this is all these superintendents open, people know what are open, they know the ones that aren't posted, that are going to be posted. There's a chatter in class. I think maybe you can jump in if you want to, but I think people know that, and I think until we resolve the internal aspect of it, we're probably not going to get a lot of bites on it anyways. Mm-hmm. So my preference would just be go forward with doing the internal search, have these deadlines, and if we don't get more than 2 internal candidates, then I still think you have plenty of time to immediately post after.
Do you think it would be helpful for Ms. Wahlberg to share the timeline?
That's what I was just going to
open searches,
ask
just so
that,
that
yes.
we understand.
That's why we made Ms. Wahlberg come tonight.
I bought her dinner.
I think her point of view was made, yeah.
Okay, so there are 3 currently open listings right now, and that would be Oxford Public Schools, Hopkinton, and Acushnet out in, but that's a K through 8, so it's not necessarily maybe our competition. We've got
Your home?
Yeah. My mom's house actually is literally, the town line goes through the house.
Wow.
You're kidding. That's funny.
And you can tell me later
hood.
where that it actually is.
It's down by New Bedford. It's South Coast.
Okay.
Yeah.
South Coast means something very different to me. But
The California girl.
so we've got Sudbury coming up November 1st, Newburyport, which is local. They're looking to post next month, so that would kind of put us back in that timeline. A competitor.
Excuse me real quick. When you gave that November 1st, is that application submission?
That's when
or
that's
deadline?
that's open.
That's the
date.
day
That's the
opens.
opening.
That's
Okay.
that's what they're planning on opening. So
Can you repeat the dates again? I'm sorry. You said
Sure.
Newburyport?
When are the current ones closed, do you know?
The current ones close. Oxford is November 1st. Hopkinton is October 31st. And Acushnet, which is, again, a little different, January 19th. So
Okay.
they have an opening
so-
from October 11th to January 19th. I'm not sure why.
Okay.
Wow, that's a long time.
That's really long. So Sudbury's coming up November 1st. That's their target date to post. They don't know, they haven't told me how long it'll be open, but I'm in contact with her, so I'll get that as soon as they make their decision. And then Newburyport, again, is pending for next month. They have a target date of posting it next month.
Okay.
Wilmington?
Wilmington has not posted yet, and they don't have a timeline yet that they shared.
Lexington?
Woburn and Haverhill, the same situation. I don't have any further information on Lexington because they posted, and then they posted an assistant superintendent, so I'm not really sure where they are with that.
Okay.
A bit of form of government, I think, maybe when the election will be over, especially in Haverhill, Woburn.
Yeah.
Will they
I
fall?
think the bottom line is you can see that if we get to this point, our timeline is well within the quote-unquote
Right.
competition.
Well, and also I checked with Ms. Wahlberg in advance because we were trying to put together, ultimately our goal is trying to be on the same timeline for when the committee 3 years ago selected Dr. Price. And scenario 2 ends up kind of with this on the same date of the first week of December. So to make that work out, we asked Ms. Wahlberg, is 2 weeks an appropriate amount of time for a search to be open?
Yes. It could definitely work in our favor because we would be in that same time frame, and so people who are looking, they basically, anyone who's looking for a job at this point has everything ready and is waiting for the right openings for them.
Yeah.
So it's not like they'll need a whole weekend. On average, we've posted most of our administrative positions about 2 weeks. A couple of them we've had open a little bit longer, specifically assistant superintendent for student services. Well, that's a hard one to fill, so you kind of want to leave it open as long as possible. But on average, we did 10 business days on all the last ones since I went back as far as 2011.
Yeah, so
That's
so 2
sort of
weeks
average.
is adequate, right?
Yeah.
No, that's very helpful. Thank you. I mean, I think just knowing when they're starting to post helps to see kind of where this fits in. So if we ended up with scenario 2, we would be closing just as some of them would actually even be opening.
Yeah.
Right.
Perfect. Okay. It's
So-
funny how that just lined right up.
So I just want to give just a little more thought to this, and if we don't go that way, I'm not going to walk away mad or anything. But if we did post this week, if in phase 1 no candidate were put forth as a finalist, we would be all set with the next set of resumes to review immediately.
Is it possible, are you allowed to preview an opening? You know what I mean? Maybe you opened it tomorrow, but we wouldn't look at anything until after. I don't know. Is there any way to do
If you
something?
open it as an external search, you
Right.
always have the option to only interview internal candidates. There's no reason to go outside. You can collect those resumes, and then if you decide that the only candidates that you want to put forward and start interviewing are internal candidates, you could always go back to the external ones if you needed to later. But for the first round, it's up to the committee to choose who would go forward. So you would have that option to, if we posted it tomorrow,
Just not look at them.
just not look at them and only focus on the internal. But it wouldn't hurt to collect those resumes and have them sitting there. And what we decide to interview would come out of who's qualified through the committee.
Is that along the lines of what you're proposing, Ms. Picard?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily proposing
No,
we do
but
that.
that you're-
I'm proposing we have a conversation about that.
Yes. But that kind of matches up what
Exactly.
you're asking. Okay.
So
Collecting
can-
the resumes.
So can I ask you a question, Dr. Price? Having gone through this roughly 3 years or so ago,
Exactly. 3 years ago.
if you were posting for a position and there was the assumption that internals were going to be looked at first before going on to external candidates, how might that factor in to your decision? Like in the business world, it's a little bit different, but I'm just curious, kind of educationally, what's the perception?
Yeah, so I think, listening to the conversation, I think if the internal conversation has not been decided in that first week, I think there would be some people waiting for the decision to be made before they applied. But you'd still have 2 weeks to do that, right?
Mm.
So, and I think anybody who's looking at this job will Google it and see some of the recent press and know that there has been a conversation among the committee
Right.
of internal and external. So I think that some candidates, there's going to be a group of candidates who are going to apply for every open superintendency in districts that they care about, and that's just going to happen. There will be another crew of candidates who will read the tea leaves, talk to people, and may wait, but they would still have time to apply after, right? So, I think I wouldn't want to not send a clear signal so that people would know, right? So
Yeah.
if the decision is to go to scenario 2, we would need to make sure that that was communicated widely,
Right.
so that people didn't think we were operating under scenario 1. Does that?
I do, yeah.
So, but so the only thing, my only comment on it would be, by opening it up for 3 weeks. I mean, I don't think you'd want to go through scenario 2 and only have it be a week after you make the decision, right? So the real conversation is, do you do 3 weeks or 2 weeks,
Right.
right? Because I don't think you'd want to go to.
No.
Do
No
you
matter
see
what,
what
I
I'm
think
saying?
we'd have to leave it until,
The 20th.
The 20th,
Right, I
yeah.
don't think you'd want to just do, if you go to scenario 2,
I mean,
I don't
the
think you just
third.
want 1 week after scenario
Right.
2. I think you'd want 2 weeks.
Yeah,
So
no
the
matter what,
question
it would
is,
be the third.
do you open it up for 3 weeks, or do you open for 2 weeks? And I think the conversation is, with what you lose in clarity, do you gain in applicants?
Well, I think.
Am I making any sense?
From what Ms. Wahlberg just said, we could easily, you have the, if we go to scenario 2, the deadline will be over until November 3rd. We could easily go to November 10th on that, it sounds like, from what you just said.
well, I think the opposite is this November 3rd is from the internal thing is closing the 19th.
Right,
So from the 20th to the 3rd is already 2 weeks.
right.
So
I'm just saying.
I don't think we have to go 3 weeks later. Unless we open tomorrow, then that would be 3 weeks by opening a week early.
Well, again, and if people want those 3 weeks, I'd rather go from 10/20 to 11/10 as opposed to opening early.
I would actually probably agree with that.
Okay.
You sound surprised you actually agree with me. Wow.
I mean, honestly, I mean, I feel like the clarity of this is probably the most important thing.
Yeah.
And I obviously voted against being internal only. Looking at this timeline, obviously knowing the work that went into it, I appreciate Mrs. Picard's suggestion of kind of, do we entertain the possibility of opening this up? I think that this actually puts it out there that we are giving, if we have more than one qualified candidate who is internal, that we are giving them the opportunity to apply and to be considered and to be evaluated. And I think that for the administrators that we have here, I think that that's a sign of respect for them and their commitment to our community.
That's right.
And if we only get one, then I think a clear, concise process of, opening it the 20th, and whether we, vote, I guess, our next meeting would be the 2nd. If we wanted to extend it for an extra week, we would have that opportunity, right? There's no harm in doing that if we chose to do that. But I actually like this.
You could always extend it an extra week on the 2nd if you felt like you didn't have
enough.
the pool.
Right. Okay.
But if lots of people will wait till the end to apply.
Absolutely.
Right.
But also, I mean, one of the things
like,
is when you
Yeah.
put your name out there, you kind of, often
Yeah.
some of us make decisions to only put your name right at the end because you don't want your name being circulated. So you kind of put it in right at the end.
That's,
Well,
that's
thank
what
you.
you did, right?
I did because I'm just me.
Thank you for indulging that conversation. It
No,
helps me to
that's
think
good.
and process in a group.
Because I feel like the question now switched from, is 2 weeks adequate or do we need 3 weeks? Because what, if I understand you right, Mr. Trista, you were saying that from the 20th,
Well, here's the thing. We're going to be
You
here
would-
on the 19th.
Right.
So we're going to know next Thursday, how many internal
Correct.
plans we have. So we can set, I don't think we should vote to set the deadlines tonight. We
Okay.
can easily vote to set those deadlines. We already set the deadline for the internal.
Internal, mhm.
Let's just wait till next Thursday and set the deadline next Thursday.
It may be a moot point.
okay. But I mean, the key thing here is we felt we needed to get a timeline together because we're having conversations with all these people for this committee starting tomorrow and make sure they understand the basic window we're talking about.
I
One
think you've done
thing-
that incredibly
Yes,
so, by the
but
way.
one thing that you don't see here that's pretty important is by extending till, which would be the 10th, then you run smack into Thanksgiving week in your timeline. So it does push you. We would never be able to do the public interviews on 12/7. We'd have to go the next week because that Thanksgiving week is going to be pretty impossible to hold anything.
Well, again, to me, the dates were more important. Finding out what the
other-
quote unquote competition is,
Right.
And I think even at this stage, we would be ahead of the curve.
Right.
So
you
I'm not as concerned about that. If it goes the week after Thanksgiving, while those public interviews are going,
Right.
I mean, my recollection is we got the 3 finalists on December 8th. We went bang bang, interviewed them. I think maybe that Wednesday, Thursday, and we voted the following Monday. So I mean, it goes pretty quick at the end. I mean, it doesn't have to be like that.
Okay.
But I still think we have plenty of time.
I just want to get that pulse because we were really trying to work toward that same timeline as before.
Yeah, I think the perception that I had before, so thank you again, Mrs. Wahlberg, was that the searches, that applicants were already submitting.
I think there's only one district that just closed, and that's it, right? Yeah.
2. There's
wha-
Berlin Boylston is in middle of finalists, and Peabody is just starting their interviews.
Oh, okay.
But that's it, okay. So, I guess if we're going to wait to make any kind of vote on this, can we proceed with talking to our committee people with this situation in hand?
Yeah, I think you got to. I mean, you have a sense of the committee's desire. I think you do the internals. You see what comes back by next Thursday. We discuss it again. But I think as far as talking to that group, and when you appoint this group, I mean, they have a ballpark idea. And
Right.
Believe me, I mean, you got 50 people applied.
And it's fantastic, yeah.
And if you choose someone and then they say I can't do it,
Right.
I mean, you're going to have.
We have
plan
other.
backup.
That's
Right.
right. That's right. That's right.
And they're good backup, It's,
Yes.
I mean, the quality of the people that I saw were impressive.
So speaking for the internals, which gets to be my job for
Yes.
my people, I think it would be very helpful if you got a sense of the committee, whether it's a vote or at least a sense, if you're going to operate under scenario 1 and 2. Like, is that the process, regardless of dates?
Right.
I think for anyone
Dates aside.
I think for anyone who might apply as an internal candidate, I think they need clarity on, is this the process? If it is scenario, at least the scenarios, I think that's really important.
I agree.
I agree.
So do we need to vote for this?
Can we, Yeah,
I think
Yeah.
I think the only modification, if we
Would be-
felt like we needed to, was in scenario 2A.
Right.
After 11.3.
Or
it
11
could
or
say,
11:10.
with an option to extend. If
To
needed.
11:10.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
I don't think we have to put that in there because we can always vote on the second to extend, but
I'm not sure we need to take a vote. I mean, all we're doing is telling the internal candidates that if we only get one candidate apply by next Thursday, we're gonna do an external search. And they can be in that, they'll be in that mix.
Right.
If we got one candidate,
Right.
they'll be in the mix with the external candidate.
Right.
So besides that, what else are we telling the internal candidates?
That's the main thing.
I think that's the thing you need to,
Yeah.
Duly noted.
but I think
That's
it's
the message.
important
Because I don't want to make a motion with all these dates if we're going to change
Right,
them next week.
right.
But
Yeah.
you could make a motion on that or something.
To accept the process. The scenarios of, basically what you're making a process is if we have one or fewer candidates, we're going to open the search before we interview anybody. Is that correct?
So you need that for a motion?
I would say that would be great.
Verbalize that.
Just have to give me a minute, David. I'm not as quick on my feet.
I'll move to accept the process as presented in the packet.
Well, I'm not prepared to vote on this back because I think we're making some changes
Right.
with these dates. I don't want
The
to. I don't.
process, not the dates, just the scenarios.
well, I think we are accepting the dates for scenario 1. And the only date that's conceivably, I would say dates in scenario 2 are suggested and modifiable.
Maybe we could do this. I'm sorry, Andrew. Maybe we could just say as presented in the packet up to 2A.
Right.
Up to 2A. So like
That's fair.
basically the first half of the page.
I don't know if this is a concern or not, but I would just point out that November 2nd is the master planning public hearing meeting.
Ooh.
So I don't know, I mean, there might be nothing we can do about that, but I don't know if that's something we want to try to avoid.
You
Or
think
maybe
that
with the
some of the
time, shift
applicants
the
are going to be at
times.
that meeting? You think some of the applicants are going to be at that meeting?
No,
Well,
if you
the
look
public,
at,
we're
if you look at
encouraging the public
scenario
to go.
1, that's the day we would interview the internal candidates publicly.
Oh, you meant the interviews. Okay. I thought you meant because of the application deadline.
No, because we would be reviewing the internal,
Right.
that's actually,
Do something about time.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
yes, that's,
Yeah, we could meet at 5.
Yeah,
if
let
that's
me,
the case.
Bev and I will look at the timing and.
that's,
make a
no, that is an important point
That's
because
a fair point.
we do not want to be in competition with that very important meeting that they've been highly advertising, so, yeah.
I think that's acceptable.
So I think the motion we really need is that if there are one or fewer candidates from the internal search, that we will open a public search. So I
Before
would-
interviewing anyone.
Yes. So I would move that we continue with an internal search. Then I lost my train of thought. That we continue with an internal search unless one or fewer candidates apply, in which case we will open a public search on the 20th of October. And
think
an
that-
internal candidate would be included in that,
Automatically, right.
automatically in
Right.
that larger pool.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
I think that covers it.
Does that work as a motion?
We can
So,
always reconsider it next week.
Oh, dear Lord.
nice, thanks.
We're going to be here
Okay,
next week.
motion by Ms. Picard, second by Ms. Vitsky Lynch. Any other comment?
None.
Nope.
So can we vote on that?
Motion's been made and seconded, yes.
So
just
all in
suspend the rules?
favor?
Aye.
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 Do we need to suspend the rules? Just a quick question.
Oh, crud, right. Yeah, sorry, crud, that's really classy. I hope
wanna
that was
see
not
that.
clear. I know. Of course, that's going to be the one thing that the microphone picked up perfectly. Yes, so we probably do need to suspend the rules, right? Well,
So I move
We
to
didn't-
suspend the rules.
we didn't suspend the rules about the, oh, that's because we looked at
I
that
don't know if
last
you
time.
Need to or not. I mean, isn't that for just for when we adopt policies?
I just asked a question.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not
I don't
clear.
think so. And
Okay.
I just-
I don't
personally
move
think
to
we-
suspend the rules.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think we need to.
Can we go back and vote on the great thing Helen said a few minutes ago?
Aye.
Did
Aye
we
and
already
aye.
do that? Aye.
Aye.
We're-
Aye.
Wow, we're 5-0.
5-0.
I'm
Fantastic.
feeling bad for
North Andover 5-0.
Bev transcribing these.
Yes, I know. I'll come
Right.
by
She's
and,
very competent, don't worry.
I'm so glad. Thank
She's
you.
incredibly competent, and yes,
Um,
I'm saying that about you, Miss Agari.
Right. And then just the one thing that we did not discuss, which is down here, is scenario 3. If we don't hire a candidate if we went all the way through scenario 1, interviewed publicly internal candidates, and we don't hire anyone, we would then open the search, and that would move us into December, but now we see that that wouldn't be so hideous, so it's okay. Okay? Thank you. Very good. And actually, I want to mention one thing to the committee as well. When we work with the review committee, the search committee for the superintendents, as I said, we're going to be reviewing this superintendent qualifications document. But if you have any comments or things you'd like to see added that you haven't already mentioned, you can certainly shoot those through to us, and we'll make sure that they are part of the committee's discussion.
Okay, you got my
I got yours,
modification?
yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
so just for the committee, I had a modification. It's not here. But,
I didn't write it in yet, because this is the original.
Yeah, it's basically the inclusion of the strategic plan, and that it's an initiative that we have started and embarked on, and that we are committed to continuing. Certainly, any new superintendent coming in will probably look at it with a little bit of a different lens, and might shift some focus, but that would be agreed upon by us. But the goal with that is to not interrupt the work that has already been begun. So.
The only other question I have, Ms. Mabley, is when will you finalize the makeup of the search committee, and how will you broadcast that?
Yes, okay. So we're going to be calling people tomorrow, and I did check in with Joyce Bradshaw, who did confirm that it's best if we swear people in, the way you did with the school building committee. Didn't you swear them in here?
We did, but the school building committee is, something that is a statutory, I don't know if you need.
I asked her, and she said, she researched and said, we do.
Okay.
She said it would be best. And so what we would do is, at our next meeting here on the 19th, we would do that and publish their names before that, probably.
And would there be cake?
I can.
I think I will.
I'll make cookies.
Is that you don't like that, Mr. Tracy?
No, I'm just thinking that through.
I didn't come up with
what
that.
we're
I
asking
asked
the
Ms.
search committee
Bradshaw.
to do is something, I don't belabor this point, but we don't have to have a search committee. Like, they're just doing.
Right.
We're getting input from them.
And-
the school, it's just a little different, I think.
Right.
I don't know.
I asked Joyce Bradshaw. I didn't make it up.
Okay. I know. I'm sure you didn't make it up.
But one thing I did research and get a suggestion, what we could do, which would be along the lines of what you're saying, I think you're saying, Mr. Tracy, is we could take a vote to say this is what we're asking the committee to do. Asking them to evaluate.
But my question was, you're going to announce them next Thursday? You're not going to tell them beforehand? Or?
No, we can do it, but we can post it beforehand.
I think it's important, too, because especially, if they're going to be having meetings coming up,
Right.
they're going to need a plan to get
Right.
sitters and whatnot.
We're going to call everybody tomorrow.
Yeah, okay.
But then we'll post it so that the general public knows.
So it'll be on the website tomorrow night, or what's fair for people to know?
We got to make sure we can reach everybody.
Are you going to call? You're going to call the 5 or 6 people that are going to be on this.
Well, there are
But-
15, but
I
yes.
mean, I'm talking the parents that
Right.
you got there's going to be a lot of disappointed people. My point
That's
is.
right. No, I understand
So
that.
how are the disappointed people going to find out that they're not on the search committee?
We're going to have to contact them. I was hoping to at least call them, but otherwise we'll have to do emails.
So I would recommend that you're not going to post anything till Monday.
Right, we won't, because also we're not going to have the Board of Selectmen person until Monday night. I'd rather do it by Tuesday.
Okay, no, I'm just saying
But
that's what I was
We can
asking.
post it attached to the
what,
agenda.
What?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, which we would have
Which
to
will be
post
Tuesday
anyway.
night.
Tuesday.
Right.
Okay. Sure.
So we can do that. And also, just so everybody
Tuesday by
knows,
5.
for every application that we receive to the NA Search email, I wrote a reply to people we've received it. Thank you very much. We'll get back to you on the 13th, which is tomorrow. So we're on schedule with that. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
All right. Any other thing on this topic at this point that we have missed? Okay. Any new business? We didn't have anything written down.
No, I do want to just say one thing. I was on a call today with the Department of Education about the release of MCAS scores. As you know, this is quite late. We are anticipating getting MCAS scores for individual students on October 24th and then sending those out. I also want, and we'll probably take some time in our next school committee meeting to talk about this, but I also, and the Department of Ed has been pretty clear, they have made a significant change in standards this year. And I'll talk more about that. They've actually even changed. It's no longer advanced proficient needs improvement warning. It's exceeds expectations, meets expectations, partially meets expectations, does not meet expectations. And there is a significant change in bringing up the expectations. So across the state, many, many more students are going to be in the partially meets expectations than wherever in needs improvement. So it is going to be a significant change in the state. And I'll talk more about that. But I just want us to be cognizant as some of the press comes out. There's going to be some public releases before we meet about that conversation. It's, as you can imagine, pretty loaded conversation. You know, as I think many of you know, Massachusetts does lead the nation in terms of achievement. So to have the leading state in the nation have many more students not meeting expectations is going to be a tricky conversation. And that's fine on the macro level. And the challenge is going to be across the state, a parent, any of us, are going to, who had a kid who got proficient last year, are going to get a partially meets expectations this year. That's going to be a much higher percentage than normal. And so those conversations with individual parents, those conversations around the dinner table are going to be happening. And that's really where the rubber's going to meet the road. So the state has discussed that, has telegraphed that. I'm not at liberty to even talk numbers about that at this time, but I think it's really important to understand that there is a significant conversation happening around increasing the expectations. And the state will talk a lot about the fact that it's an effort to ensure that all of our students are college and career ready. So at the macro level, again, you can agree in some respects. It just is when it gets down to the micro level, districts, parent, school. Last thing I'll remind you is we, K-8 at least, have been held harmless as a result of the fact that this is held harmless. So our levels of our schools aren't going to change, but individual test scores that go home will. And there will be a letter from the acting commissioner that goes home with every score that says that. So just so everyone knows.
So 2 quick questions, and you may not be able to answer them,
Some I can.
but we'll see. So for students who do not meet the expectation, right? There's a direct impact on becoming considered a level 4 school. Is that still going to?
They have not determined how the levels are going to be determined.
Okay.
So this year, remember, no school is going to change any level.
Okay.
So we are not going to get levels for any schools 3 through 8.
Right. No, I'm just thinking of other communities as well, and
Yeah. So
that was always kind of like in that turnaround type of.
Yeah. So it's held harmless, and how they do levels has not been determined.
Okay. And then for our current juniors who took tests last year in terms of meeting the requirements for passing MCAS and high school graduation, are there impacts? Are there no impacts?
So the high school MCAS is what they're calling the legacy test, which is it has not changed.
Okay.
So the only thing that has changed is the 3 through 8.
Okay.
So the high school test, because it was it's such high stakes, is going to remain a legacy test for this past year, and I also believe this year.
Okay.
But so they're
So
calling
rules
kind of
still
the
apply.
new MCAS the legacy test. So we already have gotten the legacy test results,
Okay.
and have been working with our high school students already. We have just not gotten the 3 through 8 results
Okay.
yet.
Perfect. Thank you.
So, messing with the high school test has
Yeah.
incredible implications for kids. and
That's what made me
degrees.
nervous.
So
Right.
this is much more about leading up to that.
Okay. Thank you.
And was this whole new categorization of results news to all of you, or?
No, it was not news. I mean, we have been going down this path. Remember last year we had to vote Park or MCAS,
Right,
and
right.
it was going to now be MCAS 2.0.
Right.
And so it's not at all news that we all expected that the standards would change. I think the extent to which they changed might have been surprising for some. But But I will, just one caveat if folks are anxious about this. I mean, a lot of the work we've been doing, especially in our elementary and middle school curriculum around adopting the Lucy Calkins writing, really working on a rigorous math program with Eureka, and then thinking about what we're going to do for reading next year, has been with the focus of preparing kids for this level of testing. So we haven't been sitting around waiting for this. We have known the kind of the skills that we need to have for our kids, and what those are, and we have been working hard towards those. So, we have been making strides, knowing around kind of the rigor that was going to be expected from the state, and have adopted rigorous programs to be able to meet that. So, it's not like this is surprising to us and all of a sudden we're like, oh, we got to change course. We have been marching down this course, and we have picked what we believe are strong programs to be able to adapt to MCAS 2.0 or the new MCAS or whatever they're calling it.
Perfect.
Very good. Any other questions or? Great. Move on to second public comment. Seeing none.
We doubled up public.
Yes, we did double our public.
100% increase in public.
Then I would entertain a motion to enter executive session to discuss strategy for negotiations with the North Andover Teachers Assistants Association and Administrative Assistants Association, and then not return to the general session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McDevitt, second by Ms. Vitsky Lynch. That's why I thought it was roll call, and then you started making a face. Mr. Trissy?
Aye.
Mr. McDevitt?
Aye.
Ms. Picard?
Aye.
Vitsky Lynch? And I. So 5-0. I thank you. And we'll see everyone next week. Meeting adjourned here.